Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, Resident _of Collinwood for BitChute. I'm here to continue my revisit tour for John Philip Betancourt's continuing blog series, The Return of Dark Shadows. Series 3, Chapter 5, Blood, Obsessions, and Memory Regressions. The night sky was filled with thick gray clouds that seemed to accumulate at the top of Widow's Hill, only yards away from the great mansion. The Dudley felt very busy deep within its body. Kimberly scurried around Julia Hoffman's cold laboratory in a white lab coat, placing different slides under microscopes. Her theory was that somehow Barnabas's genes had mutated just like Christopher's when Angelique placed her curse, changing his DNA forever and requiring him to and even desire the taste of human blood to survive. Her scientific answer to a supernatural question: could changing Barnabas's life everything? The only problem was Kimberly had yet to find the genes she needed to then begin test and reversing his biology. Kimberly was going at this the time the same way Julia had scientifically, but Barnabas was a being of supernatural creation. The main question that needed to be uncovered was if Kim's knowledge of science in 2016 could finally rid the impatient Barnabas of his hated trait. Barnabas did have a more concerning fear of the project. Julia fell deeper and deeper into the depths of the supernatural powers that circulated Collinwood. Could Kimberly fight the powers that were all around her? As she worked, Barnabas walked in silently, as not to disturb Kimberly. But it didn't work. She could feel his presence. As he paced around the room, his energy and force was so strong, no one at Collinwood could even pretend not to notice him. Barnabas in his element. "Come to check up on me?" she said without lifting her head from her work. "I didn't mean to disturb you. I was curious to know what you found," Barnabas said as he looked around the laboratory that had been updated with the most state-of-the-art equipment from Kimberly's own personal instruments. "Barnabas, it's only been a few hours. I've just began testing your tissue samples. It's going to take time," Kimberly responded. "I've been waiting for so long for any kind of breakthrough, and since you've come along, I felt like this could be it. I feel like I could finally be free. Don't you feel that too?" Barnabas said with hope in his eyes. Kimberly turned and had half a smile on her face. She could see the optimism written all over Barnabas's face, a sign of happiness. That hope, that surely through his life rarely ever felt. And for the first time in a long time, she felt that work was actually going to do some good. "I'll do everything that I can," she said. "Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be between two worlds? It's a strange question to ask a person, but have you ever?" he asked Kimberly as she kept her head down to her work. "No, well, in a way, I guess everyone has at one point. We wonder what's on the other side of death. That's sort of the same thing. But I come from a scientific background. You see, in my mind, everything has a beginning and everything has an end," Kimberly said, speaking in her best doctor voice. "Ah, but there It is. You see, I have never had an end. Everything in my world has been in constant motion. A beginning like everyone else, and then frozen in time forever, experiencing everyone else's life as they pass through, but not I. This is why what Julia tried and what you are doing for me is so important. If discovered, this gene you speak of can save me from an existence of loneliness, Barnabas explained. Kimberly looked up briefly from her microscope to see Barnabas staring directly at her with clear and kind eyes. Eyes that she did not expect to see from a man who was literally a living dead. And for that brief moment, and same time, she felt as though she understood him. Well, I hope I can take this, I can make this. As Kimberly finished her thought, Carolyn burst in with a grim look on her face at Barnabas, and Kimberly noticed right away. Carolyn, what is it? Kimberly asked, concerned. It's Caleb. He's been arrested for attempted murder. Kimberly gasped and immediately began to remove her lab coat. I have to go to him. I'll go with you, Barnabas said, moving towards the lab. Are you crazy? You can't. What if someone else sees you, Barnabas? Carolyn replied, interjecting herself before he could run through the door. Caleb is family. I must go to him. Please, Kimberly, may I come? He asked. Kimberly, in her panic about her eldest son, only nodded a faint yes to Carolyn's displeasure. As Barnabas continued to pass Carolyn in the doorway, she stopped him one last time by placing her hand directly into his chest. What are you doing? She whispered. Kimberly needs us. Caleb, too, he said softly. Listen to me. This town hasn't seen you in over 50 years. Putting yourself in the crosshairs of people who don't know you've come back again. Barnabas, it's dangerous, and it puts all in danger, Carolyn explained. I understand, Barnabas quipped, flippantly avoiding his Collins-Port history. Just be careful when you're out there, and Barnabas, whatever happens here in this laboratory with Kimberly, look, she's not Julia Hoffman, okay? Just remember that, Carolyn said, noticing the twinge of affection Barnabas was beginning to have for Kimberly, a woman Carolyn didn't fully trust yet. Once Carolyn released him, Barnabas ran off with Kimberly in the night to the police station to find Caleb leaving Carolyn in the doorway of the laboratory with her thoughts and concerns. She knew Barnabas more than anyone in the entire world. He could charm anyone into doing what he wanted. But there was always a price to pay. At the hospital, Leopold lurked around Kate's room while she was being attended to, just waiting for the right moment to go into her room, where they would be alone. He stood in human form in his black coat in a small hall just across from her hospital room and waited. Then the moment came. He overheard an orderly tell a nurse that the woman in the hospital room 6 was resting with a laceration to the back of her head, but would survive, and he'd return to check on her later. Kate was alone. Leopold walked over quietly to her room and walked in. The walls in Kate's hospital room was painted a faint blue that looked gray with the low lights. Kate lay asleep in her bed, almost angelic in contrast to Leopold's dark demeanor. He stood over her like an evil tower and closed his eyes. He tried unconsciously to go into Kate's mind, but it was blocked. His telepathic abilities were no match for the spell Alexander had placed on her. But it was too late. He knew Kate's mind was locked, and if the spell was broken, she would surely try and reveal his secrets. And for Leopold, the They could spell disaster, his very existence depending on one knowing the truth of his lust for blood. He leaned in close to her as she continued to rest and he felt her breath on his cheek. He could feel the blood rushing through her body like hundreds of red rivers flowing through her. He was tempted. Things could have been so different, Catherine. If only you had stayed away like I had hoped. But you chose differently, Leopold said in a sinister whisper of a voice in her ear. As he spoke, he looked around her hospital room with all the machines monitoring Kate's vital signs. He flicked the IV bag and watched the liquid slowly drip by drip into the vial that poured into her veins. He walked over again to the other side of her bed where the heart monitor beeped its precious notes of Catherine's heartbeat. Detective, it's time you die, he whispered with a tone of voice that echoed his dark obsession with ending her life. Leopold's eyes began to change to their evil amber color. His skin turned pale, and his fangs poked through as his jaw widened. Leopold slowly went down closer and closer to Kate's neck, where he could feel the heart from her blood pumping in her veins. A chill filled the room as death came inches away from Kate's body. Suddenly, the room door opened, and the light of the hall peeked through the creak and created a golden triangle of light on Leopold's back. Excuse me, can I help you? A young man's voice asked from the doorway. Leopold instantly reverted back to his normal self. His eyes and skin and fangs all went back to a normal as he slowly turned to face the person who interrupted. No, thank you. I just came to see my friend, Leopold said as he patted Kate's pillows. Oh, okay. I'm her brother, Sebastian. Thank you for coming so late. None of the nurses told me anyone was here to see her. I just drove in from Bangor myself, Sebastian explained to an irate at Leopold. Her brother, Leopold said, confirming. Well, half-brother. Who did you say you were again? Sebastian asked suspiciously, noting the stranger's awkward behavior. Just a friend. I should go. I'm sure you'd like to be alone with your sister, Leopold said. Leopold left Sebastian with a strange feeling. As he left the room, Leopold was disappointed that his chance at killing Kate to retain the secrecy of his identity and leaving the situation in limbo. But this wouldn't be the last time he would find Kate alone. In fact, he was going to make sure that Kate wouldn't leave the hospital alive. After Leopold left, oh goodness, Sebastian sat at his half sister's side as she started to come to. He jumped from his seat and grabbed her hand at the side of the bed. Kate, thank God you're okay, he said, kissing her cheek. What happened? She said, reaching for her head. No, don't touch. You were attacked in town. You hurt your head. What? Who? Kate asked, looking at her brother with a foggy head and drowsy eyes. It's me, sis. It's Sebastian. Do you remember? Can you tell me who attacked you? He asked, hoping for an answer. Kate looked around the hospital and her mind was foggy and confused. She tried as hard as she could to grasp onto something in her head that would make sense, but couldn't muster up anything coherent. It's okay. Don't push yourself. You need to rest. You hit your head pretty hard, Sebastian said, comforting his sister. Kate looked around and then back at Sebastian, who was smiling at her, hoping she would say something, anything. I don't know you, do I? What am I doing here? I don't remember anything, Kate said to a shocked Sebastian. Sebastian took a step back and smiled, a comforting smile at his sister, who was terrified. Not only was her memory partially suppressed by Alex's spell, but she She had now also forgotten everything else, including who she was, where she was, and most importantly, her attacker. Kate had amnesia. Just relax, okay? I'll get a doctor, Sebastian said, walking out of the hospital room quietly. As Sebastian stepped out of his sister's hospital room, he found a quiet corner and pulled out his cell phone out of his pocket and dialed a number. The other person answered. It's Banning. Kate's awake, but we have a problem. She doesn't remember a thing. No, nothing at all. Yes, I understand the situation, but we'll get inside Collingwood another way. I promise. I'll call you back once I get more info, Sebastian said, and quickly hung up the phone. The police station was oddly quiet considering they had just arrested someone for an attempted murder. Kimberly and Barnabas burst in looking for Caleb, searching for any officer who knew his whereabouts, and finally they came to Loomis. Calm down. Yes, we have your son, Loomis explained, pulling out the case file. Well, I want to see him, Detective. There is no way my son could have done this. He loves Kate, Kimberly explained. Kimberly, I heard it with my own ears over the phone. Kate clearly said his name as she was being attacked. And right now, she's in the hospital room, unconscious, Loomis concluded. That can't be, Kimberly said in a worried voice. What's going to happen now? Barnabas asked Loomis. He'll be arraigned in the morning, and bail will be set. That is if you have enough evidence, of course, Barnabas had. Excuse me, Loomis said, turning to Barnabas. Yes, you can't keep a man in jail if you don't have enough evidence of the crime. So far you have is something heard over a telephone. Is that correct, Detective? I would assume you would wait for Detective Banning to recover so that she could give you her side of the story, Barnabas said. Who are you again? Loomis said, baffled at the new person's meddling. Barnabas's eyes changing to pitch black, and Loomis looked directly into the black pools that swirled around and around Barnabas, then touched Loomis's chest and said, I am Barnabas Collins, the one, the only, and from here on out you will listen to my demands. Caleb Collins shall be released. You will note the lack of insignificant evidence in his case, and pursue him no more. Loomis's face had no reaction. Kimberly was shocked at that she was seeing something she had never even seen before, a hypnosis. Loomis then opened a case file and began to write his report quietly. He then handed it to Barnabas and walked into the hall. Barnabas and Kimberly looked at each other, then opened the file that read Caleb has been suspected but not charged in Kate's attack and was subsequently released on his mother's recognizance pending further investigation. How did you do that? Kimberly asked. My dear, even though I hate what was done to me, there are some added side effects that work in my favor. Mind control? Kimberly said, astonished. Caleb is family. I have learned from my past that family is the strongest key to one's own progress. Young Caleb needs to be free so that he could find out who really did this, Detective Banning, he explained. Thank you, Barnabas, Kimberly said with tears welling in her eyes. No one had ever done something so extraordinary for her. Caleb is innocent. There has to be some other explanation, she added. I'm sure there is, Barnabas said suspiciously. As they both stood in a quiet police station, Caleb came running from the same hall that Loomis silently walked into. Mother, he said, rushed over to her and hugging her. How did you get me released so quickly? Caleb asked. I didn't do anything. It was Barnabas, Kimberly stated. Thank you. How can I ever repay you? Caleb asked, turning to his centuries-old cousin. We're family, young Caleb. And your mother, thankfully, is on her way to helping me in return, Barnabas said coldly, referring to the gene therapy she had begun in the laboratory before Caleb's arrest. Shall we go? He asked. They agreed and quickly made their way out of the police station. Just a second, Loomis said as he also came back from holding area Caleb was in. You've been released, but I'm not cleared, Mr. Collins, so I wouldn't be traveling anytime soon. Once Detective Banning comes to, she'll be interviewed, and then we'll see what the real story is. I swear to you, I didn't do anything to her. I was on my way meeting her, and when I crossed the street after I parked, I saw her in the side alley, and there was this, I don't know, the shadow of a dark figure holding her up by the neck. Caleb explained to an unconvinced Loomis. Like I said, stay in town. I'll be calling you, the detective continued. Caleb, Kimberly, and Barnabas turned and quickly walked out of the police station lobby. Barnabas grabbed Caleb by the arm and pulled him close. This black mass or figure you saw, cousin, can you describe it to me again? Barnabas whispered, feeling as though Caleb's initial description sounded familiar. Very familiar. It was large, but not larger than a man. It was consumed by darkness, almost as if it was coming from the shadows. It was bizarre. It had Kate by the neck, and it was holding her up. And then she screamed for me. It turned and dropped her. That's when she hit her head, Caleb explained. Did it look at you? Barnabas asked. Barnabas, what's going on? Kimberly asked. Nothing, Barnabas's deep concern. It did. I just saw yellow or bright eyes, but nothing else. It was all so fast, Caleb said. Barnabas knew exactly what it was. This it in question was not an it at all, but a who. I have seen those same eyes when I visited the old house just the night before. Those are the eyes of Leopold Devenart. Barnabas said to a shocked Kimberly and Caleb. Loomis returned to his desk where another police officer was reading the case file, confused and surprised. Hey, Loomis, you let the guy go? The officer said in his Boston accent. No evidence. Don't worry. I'll be watching the Collins family very closely. And when they finally slip up, I'll be waiting for them. Kate and me, Loomis said definitely. Back at Collinwood, Carolyn eagerly awaiting Caleb, Kimberly, and Barnabas' return. She stared out of the drawing room window, waiting for any sign of someone returning home. When finally the door opened, and in walked Alexander. Darling, where have you been? Carolyn asked, as Alex walked in with a long face. What's the matter? Carolyn added. I've had a terrible night, Mother. I really don't want to talk about it, Alex said, brushing off the conversation she had earlier with Chris, where she destroyed the last vials of antidote that would cure him. It's been a very eventful night for everyone. I'll get you some tea. Why don't you sit down? I'll be right back, Carolyn said, sitting Alex on the soft sofa that overlooked a warming fireplace. As Alex sat she began again to hear the voice calling to her from Widow's Hill, the voice that she now could tell was her own voice, echoing across the bluffs and into the room and swirling around her mind. Your job is not done, the voice said inside her mind. What do you want from me? Alex replied, back shaking her head as if she were shaking water out of her ears. The only way to get revenge is to remove the cancer that has brought all of this upon you. You must destroy Claudia, the voice said as Alex stood up and looked out the window to where she felt the voice coming from, even though it was actually her own head. As Alex looked out of the window, the reflection in the glass facing her startled her. The face was an angrier, more wicked version of herself. Darker red lips, longer, wavier hair, but it was definitely Alex. Just another, more horrible creation from her mind. What should I do? Alex asked her reflection. In a room in the attic above the east wing, there is a book bound in leather. It holds powers you could never imagine, Alexander. You must find it, and you must use it. When you reach it, Alexander, They're open to a page marked with a crimson ribbon with the embroidered letter A. There you will find the answers, the reflection said. The dull-eyed Alex reluctantly agreed and ran off to find the bow in the attic. And as she did, her reflection remained in the glass, and slowly the reflection began to morph into the face of a mysterious blonde woman with deep blue eyes, laughing an evil laugh. So we have the tease of Angelique, which is really nice. You know, it's character segue has always been a real strong suit of this blog. Um, you'll get a tease of a character, and you'll get that character later on, which is really nice. You know, the A is a hint, and then the blonde hair, the blue eyes. You know, I really enjoy, Kate's amnesia because it takes away from the suspicious the suspiciousness. Yeah, thank you, of Leopold Devenort. And it's weird because even though I know Leopold's gonna die, Barnabas is gonna kill him. It's really interesting because here's Kate. She has this amnesia now because of Leopold. You know, Caleb got arrested for, this attack. They thought it was him, but it wasn't. Okay. You all right? Yeah, I just licked my finger. Okay. And you have Detective Loomis, who, he punched Caleb in the face because he thought he had, did it. He still thinks he did it. Caleb's telling the truth to Barnabas. I think Caleb's the most honest of the Collins family so far. Not that Alexander isn't, but from a standpoint of honesty, I would give it to definitely Caleb. He's just upfront with everybody, like, look, this is what happened, and that's what did happen. And Barnabas knows it's Leopold. Did Leopold's heel turn happen in this chapter here? No, I would dare say Leopold's heel turn happened the moment he began suspecting Kate of investigating him, and it became slower and slower. And then when he attacked her just in the previous chapter, that to me was Leopold's official heel turn. In my opinion, I want to stress that. In my opinion, from my reader's standpoint, that's what I take from this. I really like Alexander having powers. This is continuing, and this will continue throughout the series. Claudia accidentally gave her powers, but I don't even think what Claudia realizes, she's bringing about the return of her mother. And it's really interesting that Angelique, when she comes back later on, she's asking about Claudia, which makes sense. I mean, she's been after Claudia for all this time, so even throughout, that's what the argument. Really, Angelique is the cause. A lot of this is the cause of a lot of this, but Claudia is too, in a sense. Do I think Claudia is a heel? Yeah, Claudia is a heel in every sense of the word. She's a villain. Do I feel sorry for her at times? Somewhat, but her powers are more controlled. Alex does not have full control yet over her powers. And you get the sense of that throughout. Things just seem to happen with her when she least expects it. So that's my review, guys. I did my read along. I hope you enjoyed this. Link's gonna be in the description box. Like, share, comment, and subscribe.